10 minutes before 8, let's continue to talk about South Africa's notorious strike season. It really is upon us. I think you heard that, usually occurring in the winter months because of a number of wage disputes that occur. This year, several strike actions have already been put in place. Institutions like Eskom, South African Police Service, AMCU, we just heard about that now. And most recently, the employees from the South African Revenue Service were also striking, SARS. And this is all mostly due to wage negotiations and some including promotion issues. Joining us in studio now, we've got Ian Cruickshanks. He's the chief economist at the South African Institute of Race Relations. Ian, thank you. Good to have you in studio. All right, I want to just dwell a little bit before we go deeper into general strike season. I'm sure you listened to this interview now that I had with Mr. Janse van Rensburg in terms of AMCU. What did you make of that? I mean, we're going on for 5 months of striking. There is an offer on the table. They're refusing to accept it. And the members are struggling now. Give me your views.
They're starving. And I think this is a real valid factor. The problem is in the union as an industry, as a collective in South Africa, don't have the monetary reserves to keep their members paid at any sort of level. And I think what we're going to find is this whole affair is going to become more violent. They're going to have more hungry people. Hungry people become angry people, and angry people protest, throw stones at whatever, at whoever they see as authority. And I think the violence is going to spread. And I'm not sure that the strike organisers have taken this all into account.
I mean, if we look at the pitiful situation that our miners live and work under and still get paid very, very little salaries. And we have to take that into consideration. Do you think that what they're doing is fair in terms of fighting what they feel they demand? Or do you think you look at the current situation and say, look, I should be grateful to have a job at this point. Let me take the 700 or 750 Rand increase and move on. Or do you just find yourself trapped if you keep on just accepting the little bit they give you?
Half a loaf is better than no bread. And it's easy for me to say because I have more than that. But I think that what's got to be borne in mind is that a lot of the mine workers themselves have chosen to live off the mine's property. They were eventually employed with offers of accommodation and various other medical supplies and so on, supplied by the employer. They took it upon themselves, many of them, to take the value, the cash value, and to go and stay elsewhere. So, there are two sides to this, and one can't ignore either of them.
Yeah. It is a very difficult one. But when you've got 3 unions that have accepted an offer and 1 union, which is accounting for about 15,000 people that are refusing to take it. And we had AMCU saying that, no, we must never look at inflation. That's not the way to negotiate. Is that a fair comment to make?
To my mind, no. I don't think so. I think it's all important to say, yes, they should be paid more in nominal terms, but also in value terms. Otherwise, what we find is that the employers say, I'm sorry, this business is no longer viable. It's no longer cost effective. Therefore, we must apply our capital elsewhere. So the return on our capital, the shareholders, it's their company, is a justifiable return. And if that's not being reached, then the risk is perhaps no job rather than even a lesser paid job.
Yeah. All right, let's look at strike season now. I mentioned just a couple of companies that are affected by this, and organizations and institutions, Eskom, SAPS, AMCU we've spoken about, SARS, and it's just going to get even more and more heading up to election time. So let's talk about that.
That's exactly where the reason. Is it important that this is a question of timing? You mentioned a little while ago, strike season is usually in the middle of winter, usually June, July, that sort of period, and it's settled by the time we get to spring and warmer weather. Now, that may just be coincidental. But right now, it's called a bit earlier. Why should that be? The unions want to stamp their authority, to some extent, on the political landscape. And what they're saying is, look at us. We control so many voters. We effectively control a significant part of the economy as well. And our participation in government is important. Now, one would be surprised if this wasn't part of their thinking.
Yeah. So it's
a power play.
Exactly, it is a power play, and we do know that. I mean, we've got to open our eyes to that. It is a power play.
And I heard Krista say, they don't have a majority. They haven't got about 50%, but they've got to prove when they count the membership that it's 50% plus 1 If they had it, they wouldn't need to negotiate. They'd just demand their terms and they'd be settled.
I'm going to ask a controversial question, and I think a lot of people want to talk to this, and it might scare off business and it might scare off a lot of people. Do you think that South Africa is too unionized?
I don't think it's too unionized. I don't think it's responsibly unionized. And I think that is the problem. Look, the union's participation in the public arena has been relatively short-lived. If you take in Europe and America, they've been there for 100 years or perhaps longer. So we have a relatively short lifespan to judge behavior patterns. But I do think that they've put ideals that are not as important as the workers' well-being. And I think that sorting out those priorities needs some attention.
Yeah. I mean, we are living in a time now, I mean, particularly this month, where the cost of living has gone up so dramatically for South Africans. It really has.
Just look what's happened to petrol.
Yeah.
Today, R1.30 increase. Wow, that makes a difference, especially to the poorest people who spend a large amount of their meager income on food and transport. And everything that we see, that we buy, has got a transport element in it. And what is interesting is I speak to my colleagues who travel by taxi, and they say, oh, taxi fares have gone up. Now, the petrol price goes up and down. When the petrol price comes down, do they ever get anything back? Oh, no, the operators say it's got to keep them going in the meantime. So we have a one-way inflation impact, and it hurts them all the more often. So you've got to take inflation as a significant input into their cost of living and into their objection to their situation.
Public servants, now that's a big question, because if we keep seeing government giving in to the demands of public servants that do go on strike, that, of course, again affects all of us, because we are basically directly paying these increases. How does that affect us, the economy and the citizen?
First of all, you define them, public servants. They don't recognize that. They recognize themselves as independent of those to whom they are providing a service. And this, I think, is a major problem. But I think that there's no avoiding for the consumer, no avoiding this. And I think we need to express it in changes in voting patterns. Will it happen? Well, the number of no votes that showed up recently, especially in the municipal votes, has been very interesting. The large part of the electorate is saying we don't see a viable party with whom we can associate. And I think this is going to be a big headache for the president and his party.
All right, let's leave it there. Thank you for talking to us here on Morning Live. Ian Cruickshanks, he's the chief economist at the South African Institute of Race Relations, talking about strike season and where that leaves you and I, as well as all of the workers out there. All right, time for a democracy gauge. Right, our regular democracy gauge feature. This is where you rate the state of our democracy with three colours. Green means our democracy is healthy. Yellow means we must be cautious. And red, of course, means that our democracy is in danger. This morning, Democracy Gauge takes us to Mpumalanga, where we meet 56-year-old Jackie Dlamini from the impoverished Mulman area in Mkhondo local municipality. He's lived in the area for most of his life and survived by doing odd jobs on farms. However, just like most of the residents in the area, Dlamini has been voting since 1994. He says his community had high hopes when the country attained freedom in 1994. Ian, thank you so much.
Dlamini isibongo ngakhona la eMunmani ngikhulele la selokhu ngaqala ukuvota ngo94 angitholi intuthuko kodwa lokho esikwenzile ipeaceful sizomkhomba ugovernment ngelinye ilanga ukuthi thina siphokophelele kuphi ngoba yena akasenzeli lutho sicindezelekile ku-government wethu osimele ezweni lonke lase-South Africa. Asitholi intuthuko, asitholi lutho, asazi ukuthi thina siwela ngakuliphi izwe ngoba asitholi intuthuko. Kodwa sinisaqala ukuvota 94 asivoti no more. Engifisa ukuthi ngimchasele kona ugovernment before election sifuna ukubethesa Eskom okuthize la endaweni ukuthi singabantu nathi siyaphila ukuze sivote nathi asivoti noma. Ngiyabonga.
Sibongile Mkhani Mpulweni produced today's Democracy Gauge. It acknowledges all citizens and is powered by SABC News.